Hi, I'm Lindsey Moore, and welcome to my podcast, In Conversation with SMEs. I'm the founder of Agnes Marketing, and we help professional services businesses to win more clients through strategic, organised and effective marketing. The purpose of this podcast is to provide motivation, inspiration and advice to people who are wanting to start, scale or pivot their business by hearing the stories of others who have been brave, kept their nerve and achieved something quite remarkable. Enjoy. So in this episode, I speak to Ian Finch, who is the founder of Mando Group, a digital business that was established 27 years ago in a dot-com bubble, and since then has been through a whole load of iterations, peaks and troughs, to become the successful B Corp business that it is today. Ian is so open and honest in this conversation about his highs, his lows, and what he's learned about himself over the course of the last 27 years leading a business. And I know that you're going to enjoy listening to this as much as I enjoyed chatting to him. Ian, thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Looking forward to this.
I know, I've been looking forward to it as well. Can you explain to us, introduce Mando, yourself and Mando, and the business you have become?
Sure. So I am Mando Group man and boy. So I'm 27 years in.
Wow.
Mando Group now is 40 staff, still very much a digital agency, but on the very technical consultative end, like the IT end of agency land. But it's 40 of us, and we very much operate within the enterprise arena. So large scale PLCs on digital transformation projects. The way we describe our reason for being is that we make technology work for everyone. So it's deliberately vague because technology moves and changes, but everyone never does. There's always human dynamics. There's always a reason to evolve and transform a business to make it faster, better, stronger, and reduce costs and create efficiencies. And so we use technology to do that for our customers and their interactions with their customers.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because in no other, like the last 27 years, the digital transformation, the speed and the rapidity of that has been huge across every element of life. So it begs the question for me, 27 years ago, can you explain the context of the business that you started and the environment you operate, like what the world looked like then?
It was very different. So it's the 90s.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before, I'd done physics and maths and art and design at A-level, which weirded everyone out in the 90s. Didn't do so well. Worked in a warehouse a bit and got into John Moores through clearing, and did this computer studies degree. And thankfully, the first lesson was, this is a computer, this is a mouse, this is a monitor. And I was like, I can do this. 6 weeks in, I can't do this. I can't program. This is going to be the longest 4 years of my life. But what I realized, this is quite topical, is that the people that really could do the work and brilliantly weren't necessarily the people that could organize it, could present it, could articulate it. And so I was like, I will get through this if I'm the guy that gets everyone on this day, divvies up the work and then writes up the notes and hands it in.
Right.
And funnily enough, we then get through the first couple of years. I then have a job lined up with IBM as my placement year.
Okay.
And I turn it down on the basis of it just doesn't feel right, which is what you do in your early 20s.
Oh my God.
I was in bother with my course because they got 130 kids to get into placements, and this one turns down IBM in the 90s.
Oh my goodness.
Not a straightforward thing for them to deal with. But I was in a band at the time. There's another reason I came to Liverpool, and the manager was buying modems. If anyone remembers those things, how you got on the internet for 20 quid. Paying our drummer 20 quid to do an install and getting people online.
Okay.
So that summer we went away and we toured America for a couple of weeks. And people we stayed with, they would log on and checking their emails, which I know is bonkers to go
Yeah.
in 2025, but that was different
Yeah.
in 1995.
Yeah.
You know, well, like, there's something in this internet business. And so the other guys were like, well, you screwed your life up. Why don't you do this as your placement year? You can run the office. Matt will run the business and Jeff will do the work. I was like, all right.
What, set up a business in your placement year?
As my placement year, yeah.
Right.
So we attacked it like a homework exercise, wrote a business plan on a weekend.
Yeah.
But then we got £800 from the Graduate Trainee Resource Centre. Because we got that money, it meant we could get a bank account.
Okay.
Because we got a bank account, we could get an office. Once we're all set up, you know, my course were like, this seems legit and it's a decent business plan. So they got behind me, which I'll always be grateful for, and the people that made that happen at John Moore's. And then because it was all set up, you know, we could get my student loan, and Matt got his, and Jeff got a loan from his mum, and we set up. And so, you know, the original business plan was basically, from my perspective, Finchy needs to last 48 weeks. And then 27 years later, here I am. But
and what was the business then?
So it wasn't called Mando Group then, it's called Webshed.
Okay.
And I mean, so many fun stories from that time. But you know, there's a few that I always use in our new starters meetings. So 9 weeks in, having started with the yellow pages, and a phone going, AAA accounting. All right, trying a website. AAAB accounting. All right, trying a website. Anyways, 9 weeks later, we get ad time recording, which thinking about was probably like, 50 pages into yellow pages of going through. There's nothing left on the phone. But you'd ring people up, but we only had one line into the office. So then you'd have to unplug the phone, plug the modem in,
my gosh,
write it up on the computer. We didn't have a laptop. Print it off, and then we're like, okay, send it. All right, sent. Okay, great. Now let's get back on the phone. So it was like really
mad,
chaotic.
Isn't it? It's like a different world.
Yeah,
you forget.
But, we first lesson though. We charged 250 quid for that website.
Yeah.
Bear in mind that we don't do anything less than $250,000 now. So like it's a very different world.
Yeah.
250 quid for website, 250 for hosting. Great. Okay, first job. We build it, we launch it. The hosting company charged us 500 quid for hosting. We're like, okay, check your supply chain. First lesson. So the first website we did for free, basically. But you know what? We up and running. We had portfolio. Matt and I loved it. Jeff wasn't as enamored with it. And that's okay. So I learned Jeff's bit, and you know what? He got a job at the BBC on, I think, the day after his last exam. He's still there and he's doing amazingly well. Yeah. But the real step change was about 8 or 9 months in. Bear in mind that we only turned over 23 grand in our first year as a business.
Right.
We got like a $5,000 website for the Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation. So in today money, at scale money, that would be like us getting £1 million deal now.
Right.
In terms of like compared to the turnover. So it's huge. 120 pages, all done in Notepad on an old computer. I'm uploading files at 5 a.m, do 2 all-nighters, but Roy Castle Foundation opens, Cliff Richards on Breakfast News, clicking go on Internet Explorer 3, up pops a website, So
this is when Roy Castle Foundation launched, you mean?
Yeah.
And you were doing the website for their launch?
First time we'd ever beaten anyone else for a pitch. Huge deal compared to our revenue, and obviously quite high profile, on Breakfast News and everything else. So that goes live. Jeff moves on. Matt and I buy him out. We're good to go. Matt goes full time. I go back to uni, but shove all my modules into the last year and just do the barest minimum I can for the first 5 months. By hook or by crook, managed to graduate. But by the time I graduated, we had 9 staff.
Oh my God, that is bonkers.
Mersey TV had got in contact. We'd employed a creative director at the time, which was another step change because one of friends of mine at the time had said it'd be better for an accountant to set up a dog grooming business than an accountancy practice. Because if an accountant set up an accountancy practice, they'd do accounting. If they set up a dog grooming business, they'd run the business.
Yeah.
And that proved out, once we had Dave as creative director, he worried about the work. And Matt and I worried about growing a business and like still run it that way today, get everyone doing the right thing at the right place. But between that and then getting an interactive BAFTA nomination for Brookside, if you remember that. We were
Brookie.
set. So by the time I graduated,
So what was sorry, tell us about the Brookie thing.
so Mersey TV gave us Brookside and Hollyoaks websites to do.
Oh my goodness.
And the Brookside one got an interactive BAFTA nomination.
And how had you graduated at this point?
No, I graduated a month after.
No.
Yeah, so we were just on this kind of growth curve.
And I think it's important to put the context of the economy. We were in that .com bubble boom, weren't we? Do you want to explain sort of what the world looked like then?
Yeah,
in terms of the growth in digital.
It just felt so easy. You just go, we make websites, and we go, oh, can I have one? you know, and but also we were very wonderfully naive, actually. Like, I wish I could still, no, I do. What I try and do is go, in all these systems and all this professionalism, let's not forget the hustle that you can have when you're like naive. I always want to keep that little bit of me that just hustles. Like, I remember the city council called us up one day and went, lads, yeah, you've put posters all the lampposts on the M62 saying, do people want a website? We're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's illegal.
Oh, right. We're guerrilla marketing.
We're going to fine you or possibly even bring criminal damages. So, like, so you've got a day to take them all down.
No.
We're like, all right, sorry. But that sorry factor, I always kind of go, there always is an element where forgiveness is 100% better than permission.
Yeah.
And it's just when to know to dial that in. But I kind of like wistful about that, not because I want to break the law, but because why not?
Yeah.
Just do it, see what happens, you know, and I kind of want to keep that part of me. But anyway, we, you know, in that era, yeah, there's 9 people by the time I graduated. It was 22 people a year after. It was 32 people a year after that.
Oh my goodness.
And we went from this office to this office to this office. And then it was the year that the .com bubble burst.
Yeah.
And to in context, 5,000 people, as I recall, in Clerkenwell alone in London got made redundant. So the heart of digital, that many people lost their job. By that point, because of all the highly animated media and game stuff we're doing as a result of having worked, you know, for Mersey Television, we'd got into Square and Capcom, Sony Psygnosis. We'd hired someone that used to work there. She was a product manager, Claire. She knew all the other product managers. So we just grew this media and games aspect of what we'd done. Then .com bubble burst. 5,000 people got made redundant. All the fun stuff was media and games.
Yeah.
It's the other side of London and Hammersmith. You know, we started losing our market. At the same time, we'd just taken on 8,000 square foot of office with 30 staff because we were absolutely convinced we'd be 100 people in a year. Citibank and Ernst & Young and all the people were encouraging us because, you know, we were on the cover of magazines, winning awards left and right. Yeah. We're like, okay, that's not great. Then 9/11 happened, and I just remember, you know, 11 o'clock in the morning that day, just going, the studio went quiet.
Yeah.
We're like, the world's changed. And phone didn't ring for 3 months. I'm just
and you
staring
had this
into
massive, like,
cavernous space that we're
gosh.
just going to keep filling out, and now we weren't. 7-year lease.
Oh, no.
We'd taken £500,000 worth of debt as 25-year-olds. Thankfully, it was. I mean, we paid it back. We didn't mess around. We paid it back over time, but it wasn't personally guaranteed. But that's just what it was like.
Yeah.
No, I hit 25-year-old, have some money, And so obviously the world's very different now, isn't it? I mean, there's still money about, but the hoops you have to jump through to get it are a bit more difficult.
So how did you get out? How did you come back from that? You know, you've literally scaled up everything to accommodate something that never transpired.
Yes.
So how did you navigate the following years?
Yeah, we went into what I call the Mando Group dark ages,
Right.
where there's about a 3-year stretch where, okay, the plan's not the plan. What do we do about it? And what happened? 9/11 aside, which is just like everyone was like, what's going on, for a period of time. But particularly in digital, the money went back to traditional advertising agencies because digital was a bit dangerous. There was
Okay.
boo.com but lost millions. There was all these floats in the stock market like lastminute.com and all that kind of stuff had happened, which are all .coms, not just websites for brands like we were doing. But nonetheless, we had this ripple effect of impact. But ad agencies didn't have web departments still. So we kept the lights on by being the body shop for ad agencies. And it was great because it kept our portfolio vital.
So you were developing websites under white label
either
to agencies.
subcontracted or white labeled.
Okay.
It was better subcontracted.
Yeah.
Just for clarity and transparency. But we did both.
Yeah.
And it kept our portfolio vital. So we still had Delta Airlines, Toyota, Motorola, but they weren't our clients, they were the ad agencies. But it meant our work was still of a high quality for, reputable brands. And during that era, we really saw this frequency of need technically, but there's this commonality of requirements. And so, like a lot of other agencies at the time, we built our own content management system and email broadcasting software. And over those years, we had this massive shift in staff base from 13 designers to project managers and BAs and testers and developers and a reduction in designers. And you could really, that was, I would say, the industry matured as well as us, is that we kind of were like, okay, it's all a bit bigger and a bit more technical now. So we can't just have designers that code a bit and knock out a website. These are integrated systems and content management systems, multi-language and everything else. And so, so we built out all this kind of tech platform, our own content management system that had 120 clients by the end of it. But I think
so you sold that that was a separate service that you sold.
It's just the way it kind of went. It just got more technical,
right? Okay.
But what saved us then became the thing that was doing our heads in, which was because we'd regrouped. We'd ended up, our own clients ended up, AAB accounting again, as an example, who were, white website with a blue logo and differentiated by their personal and professional service, and kind of, if I built one, I built 30 of these things, and I'm just like, this is doing me in. Yeah. So I remember going on holiday in about 2005, coming back and said to Matt, I was like, I don't like this. It's changed. This tech bit is good, but not having those as our customers, having these as our customers. It feels like we're in this place where I'm doing work I don't believe in for people I don't particularly get on with, on budgets we can't afford, to keep people employed that are bored, and I'm bored too. And it's like, I know we're 8 years in, 9 years in, maths, 8 years in, but this isn't life to me. And Matt was like, I feel the same. So we spent about 6 months going, well, what is it that we actually want to do? Because we're just in this kind of survival place, and it's just getting by, which isn't what you want in your 20s. So what we realized was we loved all that design and experiential work that was award-winning in the early days. But the future is technology and building out these systems, because the budgets are bigger and you can do more interesting things, and the web's maturing. So very simply, it's like, well, let's do both. Let's be really technically led and really design led and go for it. And there was this kind of real step change deal that happened during that year where a customer had asked for a form, basically, a processing form. We want to shove a load of data in a form and stick it in a database.
Off the back of the website?
Off the back of the website, because they did English for speakers of other languages, English and maths generally, and their whole business model was people crashing out the education system with nothing. They could get to grade C or above in 10 weeks. Okay. Amazing. 85% pass rate. At the time, computer-based training had a 25% pass rate. So they were trying to find ways to grow their business, but there wasn't enough teachers, and they couldn't go completely digital because it was a 25% pass rate for computer-based training. So actually, okay, right, well, here's a requirement for form, but that doesn't sound like the issue. The issue sounds like you can't grow your business fast enough because there's not enough people to do it, and you don't trust computer-based training. So what could we do that's different? Anyway, there was a chunky but not groundbreaking budget in January. We started really working to get under the skin of the business and came up with what ended up being certainly award nominated. I'm not sure where it got to because we handed it over to them. I think it was award winning eventually. Blended e-learning platform where we had this idea of gamification come in. So people would be on a PC at 3 a.m. in a care home trying to revise English, which is not your greatest experience in life. But rather than that be their sole experience, they had teaching time, and this was a revision time. But the revision time was basically a game. So you clicked on a world map and you went and you played in a carnival type game in Rio to learn about confusing sentences and punctuation and things like that. Anyway, the eventual budget, which took 6 months to close, was 7 times what the original budget was when they had no more money. But as soon as once you realize, actually, I'm solving a business challenge here that allows a business to grow, and of course you find money for a legitimate business problem. And the 3 key things that came out of that, one is don't just take the brief and do it.
Yeah.
See what the business problem is and trying to solve that, because it's better for the client and it's potentially better for you. 2, it was a graphical tour de force. It was like we were right back where we were in the heady days. It was just this amazing piece of work. But 3, it was very heavy on the tech, but we partnered with another company to do all the back-end processing. And we're like, okay, right. In this world, you partner with best of breed tech, you integrate it with an amazing front-end experience, and then you can really do something transformational within business. And we realized in the year of developing that, like, this is what we want to do. This is what makes us sing. This is what's going to grow our economic engine. This is what we're great at, which is 3 things I've just named from a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. It's called the Hedgehog Principle. So, what you're passionate about, what drives your economic engine, and what you can be best at, do that. Yeah, okay. and that project got us the center of that Hedgehog Principle, that Venn diagram. And we're like, right, that's it. So, and we realized that we got more interesting work. We added more value by partnering with bigger technology. Because if you've got a PLC that's already invested $500,000 in the platform, they've got a budget to do something really significant with that platform to transform their business. And enterprise level PLC customers, not at the time, still not really, particularly design savvy or really appreciate the business benefit of design. It's just like, we'll buy a system and do that.
Yeah.
So suddenly we're up against like Accenture and stuff like for systems, but we're a little old Mando group. But so, you're never going to beat Accenture, but or those massive systems integrators, they would just work with us, or they'd subcontract to us, or we'd have this discrete part of the overall digital estate. And that's really what then Mando Group became of who we are now, which is really technical, with ISO standards and ITIL processes and ISO security is like the most intensive thing you can go through. So, but rightly so, and we set up a 24/7 support and just became really robust, which is unusual for a small company. So we had this kind of boutique agency energy, design sensitivity with heavyweight chops technically, which when we were technical creatives, who cares? There's so many people who were going to creatives that didn't understand why technology mattered. When we were highly design-led technologists, we've got uncontested market space there because we're technologists that don't forget that people need to use this thing when it's implemented. Now, like I say, the world's changed now. It's more standard. But in 2008, that was really different. But that really set the scene for what the next 17 years have been and who we are now.
So the game changer was really, you found the sweet spot really of where you added the most value and how to leverage that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you mentioned there that your energy came, you were true to you came you've probably felt like you weren't being true to yourself because you were in this place that you were doing work that didn't inspire you or you weren't interested in, and then the lights came on again for you and your energy. So you always followed, rather, it sounds to me like, rather than just chasing the money in, you were doing, what motivated you was doing stuff you really loved, which made a difference. And I'm interested to find out how that sort of value, that driver within you has manifested itself, because I know that Mando Group have just become a B Corp, and that's not an easy thing to achieve. No. And, I've had insights into the culture of your business and what an amazing positive place it is internally, and how important you take your wider responsibilities as a business outside of the commercial. So I'd be interested to ask you about understand more about how you've operated the business so that you were tuned in to the people as much as the clients and the work, and how that's manifested itself over the growth of Mando.
Yeah. So I suppose there's a few aspects to that. I think on a personal values basis, I kind of feel like money comes along with doing a good job. And if you're doing what you should be doing, then the reward and remuneration tends to be there. Whereas if you chase the money, then, I mean, it can work. There's plenty of people in the world that do that, and that's okay. There's no judgment for that. But for me, it was like, if I chase it, I just kind of lack purpose, and then I'll probably not get it. Whereas if I do something that's more purposeful and then cut my cloth accordingly over time, you do the right thing enough, you'll eventually be successful. Now, whether that's right or wrong, for me is irrelevant. It's just, that was the way I looked at it. All any of us can do in life is start where we are, use what we have, and do what we can, and to fix anything. And that starts with, look in the mirror and go, well, where are my values at? What's the right and wrong in this? And I don't mean own everyone's mistake for them, because a lot of people in life are willing to point their fingers, and there's been a balance in that. And sometimes, you can get shafted, and we have been at times. But I think on balance, when you look at a portfolio of interactions with other people, and you go, for the most part, I'm pretty happy the way things have gone, and that hurt. I'm not proud of myself there, but over time, and so that level of, I suppose, self-awareness, it might stretch into overthinking, and there's always a balance in that. But I think I just want us all to do that, but you can only do that with absolute transparency and honesty, and so culturally, I'm way more concerned about finger pointing than I am about mistakes. Mistakes happen, but my gosh, own it. If that mistake becomes everyone else but you, I have a problem with that, culturally.
So culturally then, what does that unlock in the people that work for Mando Group?
When it goes right, and for the most part it does, I think it means you can get to the heart of the issue far quicker and solve things quicker. There's a pragmatic version of it, the practical. More than that, though, it's incumbent on you to create this sense of psychological safety that it's okay.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite customers ever said to me on day one, Ian, great working together. Let me be really clear. I've got one rule, really, and that is I've got immense capacity for bad news early, and I've got zero capacity to the point of violence for bad news late.
Right.
Are we clear? I was like, we're clear. And do you know what? He was utterly consistent. If we could clearly seen risks ahead of, and we were mitigating them becoming issues, and he was like, right, we'll figure it out. If we missed something and it became an issue, not happy. and I think that's just what I want for everyone. It's like, look ahead, see what's a risk, and let's mitigate it together. So let's not let things become issues. And because so often, if there's a competence thing or a negligence thing, okay, fine. But what I really have a problem with is when there's an issue because someone just hasn't wanted to have a difficult conversation. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. So you've made it and created an environment where it's safe to say,
yeah,
I think I've made a mistake, or
yeah,
and that presumably creates an ability to take risks internally and for people to suggest things and be more entrepreneurial.
that's the plan. I think humans are humans, and you can kid yourself as a founder entrepreneur that is exactly landed like that. But that's always the heart behind it. Yeah, at any point in time, you've got, well, in our case, 40 people with 40 backgrounds and 40 hang-ups, or multiple hang-ups. Yeah, and whenever you're trying to have any kind of business change, you've got the people. Well, it takes 40 days to form a habit, right? But you can't have 40 people form a habit on day one, so you can't time exactly this new habit's going to work out in day 40. You've got this staggering as it goes around. So any kind of cultural shift takes a while. There's a book by Tom DeMarco called Slack, and it talks about leadership being set the direction, manage direction, then follow up, follow up, follow up. They're your 5 rules. 60% of those rules are follow up, and that's an Achilles heel for me. I'm definitely one of those people that go, say it. I said it once. What's going on? Oh, I was in a company meeting and as a passing comment 2 years ago, so you put this stuff and really trying to reward good behavior, which sounds like behavior is a difficult word because it conjures up being at school, but it's not. It's just, people have who they are and then how they behave. And we're dynamic.
Yeah.
How you are will change environment, diet, food, stress, whatever else. But if we can kind of all coalesce around a behavior that helps you set up other people for success, then great.
Well, that's interesting because you've obviously gone from you still are an out-and-out entrepreneur, but you've now got 40 people. So you can't manage a business and grow a business of 40 people by still having the same mentality as a start out. Can you? So what have you learned about the different roles of entrepreneur, start out to MD to CEO? How have you had to, what have you learned that has to change?
Yeah. So, this does relate to the B Corp earlier, which is we've hit 60 staff 3 times and failed 3 times to carry on sustaining the business for a variety of reasons. But in terms of this question, one aspect of that was I realized I was still very much thriving on water cooler moments and touch points. And then you realize I can't influence 60 people. I've got to work through an org chart.
Yeah.
And a key change in my own behavior was when lockdown happened and I wasn't in reception with people or at the water cooler or coffee machine or having face-to-face meetings. I had disembodied heads and an HR manager, and so I had to lose my natural style, or rather put it in my toolkit as a tool, but not the only tool, and go, well, how can I run a culture that I believe in with systems and processes that work and give people careers, and make sure we're serving our customers and each other well via a disembodied head and a spreadsheet, and it, my gosh, it took a bit of adjusting, because you'd spent years being in the moment. We run a hybrid environment now, so our touch points are very kind of curated.
Yeah.
But largely it's, for certainly 6% of the week plus it's remote. And so, that transition from an energetic, come on everyone thing didn't work past a certain point for us. I'm not saying it can't work for everyone, but for me, I realized that was very much a thing. And so there's this been transition to go, well, okay, there's a management bit, and then realizing that I'm great in the moment as a manager, but let's pull out the notes and go through the to-do list from last time. It's just not my wheelhouse. Sometimes you got to accept that. So, and I'm probably I didn't cling. I'd felt responsible for doing more of the work for longer than I should. And actually, if I could live the last 10 or 15 years again, I'd probably changed my approach, because I think because of that starter beer and just how hand to mouth it was, and all these people and all these clients suddenly give you work, I think my own personal proclivities had this almost like guilt-driven thing that I had to do the work, I had to be first in, last to leave.
Right.
I couldn't ask anyone else to do something I wasn't willing to do myself, which is I think, quite good, noble character traits, but it didn't work out in practice.
No.
What happened was I just became broader and broader shouldered, more and more of a Superman, and actually people
And a bottleneck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are like, I can't do that. And instead of feeling inspired, I just felt crushed, you know.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I had this moment, it's like, I don't want on my gravestone, really meant well, but destroyed people. You know, it's like, no. So let's figure out how we can create space. And a lot of it was my own identity and ego, just like, I don't have to be first in, last to leave. I can ask people, and I shouldn't feel bad about it. Weird things to have to deal with, but it's truth. And so I'm very much, in the last few years, been creating space for other people, and I realize people just want their strengths to be used and recognized and know what success looks like and do it and be rewarded.
Yeah.
None of which is they want you to be working longer than them and doing all their work for them and like weirdly competing with them on it. Yeah. And so it's I had to trust myself a lot more about just kind of delegating out and putting the systems in place, which of course is then, like I said, back to what B Corp's about. So it's not me and anyone that I'm influencing through the org chart that's setting a culture and a standard. We've now got a systemic standard that's global for triple bottom line living, you know, ethical ways of working and checking your supply chain out. And between that, ISO and investors and people, and the best HR manager in the world, D, you know, we've got a system. Ideally, there'll still be people involved, so there's always going to be breaks in the system somewhere, but really thorough way in which, you know, people can understand what goals and measures and success looks like and do it against a plan that works. And honestly, it should have happened probably 10 years ago, but we are where we are now, and I'm feeling really good about that. Yeah,
as you should. So just to wrap up, if I could ask you, over 27 years, your highs, your lows, and wish I'd knowns, if you had to choose one of each, what would your high be?
My high, oh man, there's loads.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no, there's a few things that kind of you get a kick out of, like, you know, it was fun in my 20s being on the front of magazines as Entrepreneur of the Month, you know, or other things like that. But the more serious stuff, I think there was a point in time shortly after I'd bought out my other founder, where that following year was probably the worst year of my career. It was just, for a variety of reasons I don't have time to go into, it was incredibly difficult, and I realized that what got me here won't get me there. We had to downsize twice, and then we had to rebuild, and it was difficult for everyone. But those who stayed with us, you know, I learned in that time. I was like, right, I said we've got to make a cut once. I've done everything that every entrepreneur's book says don't do. Cut shallow, cut twice. So now we're all in a difficult place. You have no reason to believe me because I said this last year and then said this 6 months ago, and now we're here. But what I will do is report with total transparency how we're doing. So we lost 40 grand this month. We lost 30 grand next month. Lost 20 grand. We broke even. We made 10. We made 20. And by the end of the year, we broke even. And when people heard that, there was high fives and hugs, and we'd gone through this horrific 6-7 month experience of no one's going to get a pay rise because it'd at best be a Costa coffee voucher. Like we'll wait 7 months and we'll have pay rises once we've sorted ourselves out. We extended the year end. That year, 6 months later, I was in the Arsenal Stadium at the Drum Awards, and there was a Judge's Choice Award. And they'd had this kind of invented award for the night because they'd heard our turnaround story from that level of devastation to, at the time, a site called Partner of the Year, and we'd grown like 40% after shrinking and reformed the whole business and back to profit and everything else. And they were like, it's the best turnaround we've ever heard. And I was able to accept an award on behalf of everyone. That was really special. And I think in the context of having done a buyout, there was this quote from Bill Gates, which was everyone overestimates what they can achieve in a year, but underestimates what they can achieve in 5.
Yeah.
So after that kind of moment, 3 years later, I look back at our new offices and our new brand and how we were set up and everything we're doing that we still do now. I was like, bang on that. Just overreached year 1. It was just too much and lost control. 5 years later, we look and feel exactly how I had in mind.
Yeah.
When that other moment happened. So that feels really good. I think the third example, I just, since we're here, just like to share the love for my directorial team. And that, I had a kind of a physical, well, I didn't have a kind of, I was diagnosed as a physical, mental and nervous exhaustion breakdown. I was just on a meeting with the ops director one morning, and just 10 minutes in went, I haven't heard a single word you've said, and just kind of cried. And he was, if you know Andrew, he's the most heartfelt, lovely guy, but it's just like, you don't look well, go to a doctor. and also I didn't look well. I went to the doctor and I got signed off, and the next day I came back and went, look, here's the thing. I've been signed off for a couple of weeks and I'm sure it'll be fine. They were like, no. As a unified team, they said, take 3 months. We've already turned off your email. We've turned off Slack. We've emptied your diary. The only thing you're going to do is every 2 weeks, tell us how you're doing.
Oh.
And it was the biggest act of love and support I think I've ever received. And I didn't take 3 weeks, 3 months. I took 10 weeks and kind of came back in a phased approach. But when I came back critically, I came back to business that was running and then just realized all these hang-ups about me having to do weren't relevant.
Yeah.
When I came back, there was a few gnarly, complicated decisions that need to be made that only I could do. And so for the last few years, I've just done that.
Yeah.
And it's been this whole, and I'm really proud of them, just like heartfelt gratitude towards them. I love the team we work with. It's just been an amazing period of time, over the last couple of years, and just dead excited for the future. Yeah.
So what would you say you wish I'd known was?
The wish I'd known, I suppose it's related. I wish I'd backed myself a bit earlier. Particularly when you start out and you're young, you can end up employing a load of people that are older than you. Mm-hmm. You feel a bit overawed. So there's that kind of back yourself. I don't think I really respected what entrepreneurship was because it's my placement year. I'd never called myself. It took 10 years to allow myself to be called an entrepreneur because I just get cringy. Even now I feel a bit about the term. But you normalize what you're good at. And what that means is, it's worse is you can judge everyone else's weakness against your strength and become a bit of a judgy person. But if you normalize what you're good at, you can't recognize your own strengths and realize where you really should play and how you can support other people. And when you've got a better sense of what you're good at and what you're bad at and actually own it and don't feel bad about it or don't feel arrogant about it, just go, it is. Yeah. Then you can set up systems. You go, I'll play to my strengths here and everyone else can play their strengths. And I could have done that 10 or 15 years earlier.
Okay.
And I think the other thing is the downside of being more about doing a great work and having fun and money coming is you can just not look at the money enough. And actually, once I got an FD, game changing. Right. That should have happened. Very practically, don't mess about with finance. Don't try and do it yourself. Just get an FD, even if it's a fraction of what early on, and set things up with profit in mind from day one. And then there's this balance, isn't there? That's critically important. And if too far can de-risk everything. You become a tyrant and just obsessing about a postage stamp. Yeah. Equally, you can be frivolous and not. And it's finding this balance between really good control, but still having a bit of a risk taking. Yeah. Let's see how we get kind of vibe.
Having advisors around you to
Huge.
Input in their area of specialism, and you can then take that information and decide what you do with it. Really, as the owner.
Absolutely that.
Ian, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed. Thank you for being so open and honest and sharing your feels like 3 lifetimes in one career in terms of the journey you've been on and what you've achieved.
I think it has been like that with digital. There has been these 3 epochs really, and we've worked for all of them, and it's felt like lots of different businesses, not just one, and that's been exciting. But yeah, thanks for having us.
And welcome, and I'm really excited to see what's next for Mando Group as well. Thanks for being here.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Feel free to follow us on our handle @Agnes Marketing on Instagram and LinkedIn. Thank you.